Hello and welcome. My name is Natalie Beck. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with ChildLink in Chicago, Illinois. ChildLink is a community-based nonprofit that provides individual, couples, and family therapy. In light of the coronavirus pandemic, we have decided to transition all of our therapy services to be fully sustainable online through telehealth. In addition to providing these services, we're also releasing a web series to offer you tips and strategies for managing mental health concerns that may arise during the coronavirus pandemic. If you or someone you know is experiencing mental health symptoms and you're interested in therapy services, or if you have specific questions that you would like us to address in these videos, please feel free to reach out to us at the contact information listed at the beginning and end of these videos. Other than that, let's go ahead and get started on ways that you can manage your anxiety during the coronavirus pandemic. All right, so let's talk anxiety. One of the reasons why we decided to do a video on anxiety before things like, say, depression or substance abuse issues when talking about the coronavirus is because we have had an overwhelming response from both patients and people within the community saying that anxiety is kind of the top of their list for mental health concerns and symptoms that they're experiencing, which makes sense. Anxiety itself is a survival instinct that we have that allows us to have a response to threats that we perceive in our environment. It's normal to have anxiety. It's also normal to have negative thoughts sometimes. And our brains are always active. Even when we're sleeping and we're not consciously aware of what's going on, we're still dreaming, we still have normal body functions. So our brains are used to always operating and being aware of what's going on. In addition to that, it's completely normal and expected that all of us at some point in our lives are going to go through periods that are difficult or have challenges or experiences that are unpleasant. And it's normal and expected that we're gonna have some focus on that and that our brains are gonna wanna pay attention to that. However, while anxiety is a way of keeping us safe and it is a normal process that we have as a survival instinct, anxiety can become problematic when it's out of proportion to what's happening in the moment. So if you experience your anxiety as feeling excessive or as feeling persistent or distressing, or you find it hard to engage in relationships or complete your work because you're having so much anxiety, that's when it reaches a level that is problematic and no longer helps you. So in order to give you some clarity about what anxiety looks like when it becomes problematic, let's go over some of the symptoms that are commonly experienced with anxiety. So as we talk about anxiety symptoms, one thing that is important to keep in mind is that you won't necessarily experience every single symptom on the list, and you necessarily won't experience the same symptoms that other people in your family or community are experiencing as well. For anxiety and for symptoms, different people experience different concerns. What it's more important to think about is, are you experiencing a number of these symptoms, and are they being experienced on a consistent basis that's disruptive to your life? So some common symptoms that many people frequently experience are things like racing thoughts or ruminating thoughts or intrusive thoughts or memories that can be repetitive or persistent, difficulty accepting or managing uncertainty or having a difficult time managing unpredictability, feelings of restlessness, nausea, irritability, hypervigilance. You can experience physiological symptoms including shortness of breath, tightened muscles, tightened chest, increased heart rate, feelings of panic, sweating. Sometimes you can get muscle tension or fatigue if you're constantly feeling very stressed and tight. You can also feel very tired and fatigued just because of the way that your body responds to these physiological symptoms. And you can have a decrease in motivation. Sleep disturbances are also common, so if you have a difficult time falling asleep because of these symptoms or waking up frequently throughout the middle of the night, that's a common concern with anxiety. Another concern is also that if you're waking up and you're not feeling well rested, you might be having some tossing and turning or disrupted sleep that you're not aware of. You can also have difficulty with focus and concentration, and this is an important thing to keep in mind too, because sometimes people may feel that they have ADHD symptoms when in reality it's actually anxiety that's just making it more difficult for you to focus. And sometimes treating the anxiety and the source of the anxiety is actually enough to cause a change in your ability to focus and concentrate. Along with this, there's also a tendency sometimes to become a little bit dismissive of things that you have to do, and procrastination can really take over, especially if you're having a difficulty with focus and motivation. And finally, you may find that you're avoiding situations or people that cause you anxiety, even if those people or situations are healthy for you or are necessary for you to participate in your daily life. So that's a list of common symptoms. Let's get into things that you can do to help manage these anxiety symptoms. There's a saying in dialectical behavior therapy that worry is like a rocking chair. It keeps you moving, but it takes you nowhere. And that's because worry is a repetitive negative thinking process that occurs after an initial concern about your future. So you'll have the concern and say, what if this happens? Or what if this goes wrong? Or what if this occurs? And after that what if question, you then begin engaging in a worry spiral that is largely based around guesses, assumptions, and predictions for the future rather than effective problem solving. So worry, in comparison to problem solving, is more a constant repetition of concerns and assumptions and guesses rather than information gathering or logically processing through information that you've already gathered. So for this reason, we often encourage people to try to have a time period that they can set aside to have their time to worry or have their concerns so that they have a break from it. Because what you want to really do is have a balance between avoiding your issues completely to where you're not addressing them and you're not processing them, but you also don't want to do the exact opposite of that, where you have concerns and worries that are nonstop and constant to where you're really just kind of spinning your wheels. Especially with worry, it's very common to feel like there's some sort of value that you're getting out of it, that if I worry about it enough, that means I'll be prepared for it. If I worry about, this, and this happening, at least I'll be prepared. And that's actually not true, because when you worry, you're less engaged in logical considerations and you're more just kind of spinning in the same thought process and in the same thought loop. So piecing apart time for yourself to have an effective space to really limit that exposure to information is going to also be helpful, because you're going to be much more mindful about seeking out information and gathering data. COVID is a perfect example of why limiting your exposure time is really helpful if you're someone who engages in worry. The current pandemic that we're in is obviously something that none of us could have predicted. No amount of worry could have helped us to really realistically prepare for what happened, because this is a whole new experience that many of us have had. And there are changes that happen on a regular basis from either the CDC or the World Health Organization or from your governor or for the federal government that directly affect your health, your work life, your home life, and your leisure activities. So it's important to gather information and to make thoughtful decisions about what's going on in your life. But it's also not helpful to do things like spending 12 hours a day on social media or 15 hours a day consuming news that can oftentimes be really distressing and isn't necessarily after a certain point going to help you make effective decisions for your life. So with that in mind, let's move on to some strategies that can help you during the exposure time to make it more effective and help you engage in a logical problem solving process rather than leading you down a path of worry. All right, so after you've set aside your exposure time and you've decided, okay, I'm going to worry about, let's use the coronavirus as an example. I'm going to worry about COVID and everything that I need to be worried about and concerned about between the hours of 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. So I'm going to give myself that hour, I'm going to gather my information, and I'm going to make decisions about what other, information I need or about decisions I need to make based on that information. The first thing that you should do once you set up that exposure time and you have that set in your mind is to also come up with strategies to make sure that before that time and after that time, you have a bookended experience prepared for yourself to cope both before and after. Now, you're exposing yourself to what you know is going to be either distressing or upsetting, or is going to lead to pain or suffering or just discomfort in some way. So we're already going to prepare ourselves for the idea that exposure time is going to be exposing us to unpleasant and uncomfortable things. And as a way of managing that discomfort, and as a way of making sure that it doesn't spill out into other areas of your life so that it does stay a very specific exposure time period, you're going to want to have activities that are going to help you relax, lower your emotions, lower the intensity of your emotions and stress, so that your brain is able to make logical decisions and to really be fully mindful and present when you're gathering in this information. The second thing you're going to want to do is to really make sure that you are taking your time and approaching concerns one at a time. If you feel that the time you've set aside is not long enough to adequately address the concerns that you have, for example, let's say that you only want to do the hour between 3 and 4, but you don't want to do it every single day. You just want to do it every couple of days. But you start to realize that maybe that's not enough time for me to gather all of the information. There's a lot of news coming out. There's a lot of different sources I would like to check in with just to make sure I'm getting adequate information. And I want to be able to follow up with this information before I go into problem solving. That's fine. You can decide how much time you need, especially if it's done in a logical, rational way. But what you don't want to do is try to start tackling multiple concerns and kind of whipping yourself up into a frenzy where you maybe start to clump in concerns that might not even be yours. So for example, you start to think about, oh gosh, well, I need to be worried about this and I need to get a mask, and oh my gosh, the masks probably aren't going to work, and then I need to do this and I need to do this and I need to do this. And suddenly you have concerns that might not even be valid getting lumped in with concerns that are valid, and it's hard to problem solve and piece those apart because now your emotions are raising and you're not thinking logically. So take time to really piece apart what you're thinking about and what you're concerned with. The third recommendation is to allow yourself to just ride the wave of whatever emotions do arise. In dialectical behavior therapy, we talk about riding the wave as a way of kind of managing whatever may come. You're not going to lean in too hard into the emotions to where, for example, if you start to feel sad, you're not going to force yourself to cry. You're not going to force yourself to cry harder. You're not going to lean into it, but you're also not going to lean away from it and try to avoid it or push it off or pretend like it's not there. It's just a matter of allowing it to present itself, acknowledging it when it does, feeling it, and letting it subside again. Most emotions come and go within a very relatively short period of time. We can't maintain intense emotions for a long period of time because we don't have the energy for it. So really, riding the wave helps you conserve energy, but it also helps keep you in a more logical mind frame where you're able to cognitively understand the emotions we're experiencing. And that is the definition of processing something. It's cognitively understanding what you're emotionally experiencing. The fourth recommendation that we have is to write stuff down. A lot of times, especially with worry cycles, it's really easy to get wrapped up into concerns and to play them over and over and over again until they seem much bigger than they actually are. Another really important thing about writing things down is that you can oftentimes have a much better understanding of what you're working with and what you're dealing with when you write it down, so that you can actually engage in problem solving rather than just worrying about the same concern or even having the same sentence running over and over and over again in your head about the same 3 concerns. It's really important to be able to move and build productively on the information that you have rather than getting stuck. So writing it down can oftentimes help you realize, okay, this is what I'm focused on, and I'm just repeating the same concerns over and over and over again. Finally, challenge positive and negative beliefs that you have that keep you stuck in worry or that contribute to the idea that worry somehow is productive for you. So a lot of times, for example, people will say, oh, well, if I don't worry, I'm not going to be able to figure this out. Or, there's no way I can stop worrying. Everyone in my family worries, and this is how I am, and this is how my brain works. That's actually not true. Most of us learn this behavior and most of us can unlearn it. So this is really a process of challenging some of the things that you're thinking and challenging some of the beliefs that you have that keep you stuck or trapped in this mental process. And now we're going to get into some questions that you can ask yourself to help challenge some of those beliefs and also kind of challenge some of the logic of thinking spirals. So I know on the slide that was a long list of questions, so I won't go over all of them or read them to you. You can go over them on your own and kind of look and see which questions work for you. And you can kind of get a sense of what the overall function of those questions are, which is that you're really trying to engage in a process of acknowledging that worry is repetitive negative thinking that is based on guesses, assumptions, and predictions about the future that may not necessarily be true or even likely. And that's one of the questions that I think is really helpful for myself and for other people that I work with in therapy is that, you have a lot of worries, but the process of questioning yourself is to help you reality test a little bit about, yes, this could happen, but is it likely? Is it probable? And if it does happen, is it going to be as destructive and horrible as I think it's going to be? Or is the worry about it actually more detrimental to me than what the actual occurrence would be to me? So it's really helpful to kind of find questions that can cue you into your thinking process and will kind of slowly over time serve as a trigger for you that, okay, I'm off in a thinking spiral right now. I'm worrying myself unnecessarily. How can I get back to a more logical thought process so that I can actually decide, do I need to engage in problem solving right now? Do I need to make decisions? Or do I just need to take a break and step back from this because it's really not helping me move forward and make decisions for my future? So it is helpful to postpone distress, anxiety, worry, fear, and other strong, intense emotions towards time-limited exposure periods that you can use to either feel emotions that are uncomfortable or distressing or overwhelming, to gather information that may cause emotional responses or may cause worry, and to just engage in problem solving about stressful topics. However, outside of this exposure time, it's really important to also have a balance of distress tolerance techniques that you can use to help you get through the day and to help you do the things that you have to do for your day. So engaging in your relationships, making sure that you're productive with work, and making sure you're taking care of your home life. And in order to do that, a lot of times distress tolerance techniques can include distraction techniques and self-soothing techniques so that you're not necessarily avoiding the issue because you have that exposure time, but you're avoiding that issue in the moment so that you can get through what you need to do. Within dialectical behavior therapy, which is where a lot of distress tolerance techniques come from, they have the expression that distress tolerance is like filling up your gas tank so that you can get from one destination to the next without having to stop. So really, these are not necessarily going to be always full-blown coping skills or things that are going to take you away and require a lot of time and energy. They a lot of times can be very specific and limited to just getting you through a specific moment or a specific urge that you might have or strong sensation of an emotion that you might get hit with that you just need to get past and keep moving on with your day. So in order to go over some of these distress tolerance techniques, we're going to talk about an acronym from dialectical behavior therapy called BOSS so that you can better understand some strategies you can use to manage your distress in between those exposure times. So the good news is that BOSS as an acronym is actually really helpful because it's very easy to use once you understand the basic premise of it. So BOSS is a way of reminding you ways in which you can focus on other things as a way of temporarily distracting yourself from whatever is distressing that you're saving for your exposure time. So the first is B, which is being busy. And this can include anything from cleaning your house or doing other chores to engaging in hobbies or getting work or homework done, anything that is going to make you feel productive and is going to help you reduce distress. So, especially for those of you who might have some OCD symptoms with your anxiety, this is going to be really important to make sure that you're not just taking your desire for control over a situation and displacing it onto something else. So if you feel like you need to fix, manage, and control something that you're saving for your exposure time, it's not going to be helpful to stress yourself out by trying to fix, manage, and control your closet or your kids or any other thing that you would try to use to distract yourself from being busy. So this is just something that's going to help you reduce distress, make you feel better, something to kind of absorb your mind in temporarily so that there's no opportunity to get lost in a worry spiral. The O is focusing only on others. And what that means is just getting outside of yourself and doing something for someone else. A lot of times, if we're worried about our own concerns, it can be really helpful to just remind ourselves that other people have lives that they're living, that have their own concerns, their own worries, and that people get through other struggles that they're surviving too. And so a lot of times it's good to just reach out to an old friend and schedule a phone call. Now everybody's using Zoom or other Hangouts. House Party is a great app where you can play games with other friends and family while also being able to video chat with them. You can reach out to people who are celebrating graduations and had their graduation canceled, and you can do something to celebrate with them. You can, reach out to someone who had to postpone a wedding and congratulate them on an engagement and give them some sort of encouragement. Just something to get yourself in a thinking space outside of your concerns and your own situation. The first S, as we move along, is to focus on strong sensations. And for those of you who have some post-traumatic stress that contributes to your anxiety, or if you have a lot of panic where you have that sheer visceral fear that doesn't necessarily have a known catalyst, especially if you haven't been working with a therapist to kind of understand some of your triggers, it can feel like there's fear and physiological responses without a real clear understanding of what's going on. Strong sensations are really helpful because it can help bring you back into your body and really help you focus on the present, which is what distress tolerance techniques are really great at. So strong sensations are basically going to be anything that pulls on anything sensory. So beautiful images or, staring at a candle are great for sight. Staring at artwork is also helpful too, especially if it's a really intricate or engaging piece that helps you get kind of lost in it. Same thing with music. You can listen to some really intricate and beautiful classical music. And it doesn't have to necessarily be soothing or calming. It just has to be something that helps you to engage in the present moment and get outside of yourself temporarily so that you're just focused on whatever is happening with that music. Other possible things can include tasting things that have a really strong taste or that have a soothing taste or a pleasant taste or a distinct taste. Same thing with smells. Smells are great, especially if you have scented candles or aromatherapy lotions. It really helps to engage you and bring you back into the present and bring you back into your body. Same thing with touch. A lot of self-massage is very helpful, or you can do things such as grabbing a cold ice cube or taking a hot shower or a cold shower. Those are things that are all going to bring you back into your body, are going to be great as a grounding technique, and are also going to help you, because they're so sensory, to calm down your mind, calm down your thinking, move you away from the abstract of worry and prediction and guessing, and move you more into this is what's happening here, this is what's happening now, and I'm in the present. I'm not worried about regret from the past. I'm not worried about future from the, present or anything that I have concerns about for the future. I'm just here right now in this moment. The second S is for statements of self-support, and these can come in many forms. So you could do self-affirming statements that acknowledge your current vulnerabilities. So for example, I'm really sleep deprived right now. I didn't get sleep last night, but I'm sure that if I got some rest, this wouldn't feel so terrible right now. Or you can make positive affirmations to yourself. This is a really difficult time, but I know that I can manage this because I've done this before. And finally, we get into radical acceptance coping statements, which are my personal favorite because I think they're really helpful in cueing you back into the present moment, but also really help with distress tolerance because they're good reminders that we can't necessarily change everything in our environment, even if we want to. So there are times when we just have to radically accept what is going on, even if we don't like it. So to demonstrate some radical acceptance coping statements that you can use, I've asked a few friends of ChildLink if they would share their favorite radical acceptance coping statements that they used during the pandemic to help them manage their distress.
This situation sucks, but it's only temporary.
I am strong and I can deal with this.
My thoughts don't control my life. I do.
This too shall pass.
This is the way it has to be.
Esta situación no durará para siempre.
This too shall pass.
The present is the only moment I have control over.
This situation sucks, but it's only temporary. Abad.
This too shall pass.
El presente es perfecto, aun cuando no me guste lo que está pasando.
My anxiety, fear, and sadness don't feel good right now, but they're not going to kill me.
This situation won't last forever.
I can take all the time I need right now to let go and relax.
So what?